Welcome to episode 23 of Randall Vision. I'm your host, Randall. Today's topic is I won punk rock. All right, this has been, if you could notice the upload schedule, I've been putting this off. And I'm expecting that to kind of continue, that like once a week or maybe even longer is probably going to be the new upload schedule. At the beginning, I thought it was going to be easy and do it daily, and that's not working out. And then I reflected a bit, both the I won philosophy and beer. They seem to be digging into somewhat like egotistical territory. And I've been reflecting on that and trying to figure out what's the purpose. And if my purpose is not proving to other people how great I am, and not trying to prove to myself how great I am, then what? Why am I talking about this stuff? So people look at YouTube and, or at least like my buddy that I was talking about a project with, they see it as like, how do we get views? How do we become successful? How do we get this off the ground and establish something, as if that's the goal? And I think from the beginning of this, that was not the goal. Authentic expression is the goal. I think I've been doing that pretty well. But the raw potential, something that I failed to say correctly in the first episode, is how that whenever you upload a video to YouTube, half the world can now access your video. That billions of people can now see this thing that you've created. Are billions of people going to watch it? Probably not. Are millions or thousands, in my case? Probably not. Is anybody going to watch it? Doesn't matter. What matters is the potential that you have just spoken or did something, created something, and the potential to share it with half the planet is there. Maybe more than half the planet. That's nuts. That is bonkers. So just because it doesn't reach that many ears doesn't diminish the fact that the potential exists. Okay, so sorry for getting weird out of the gate. That has nothing to do with punk rock. So pulling that around, upon reflecting on why I'm doing this, I've been kind of like losing touch with myself or what I am or all that. Like, I'm still here, but there's something else going on. And so I've been kind of like scurrying to document what I can while I can't, like that I'm asserting I exist, I'm real, and here's the things that were real in my life. And like, even watching the videos, I'm like, damn, I'm not sure, does the past exist? I'm not a firm believer in linear time. Like, I understand that that's how we experience it, but I'm highly skeptical if that's how it works. So I'm not entirely sure if my past exists. And that's part of why I'm talking about my past, or want to talk about my past. And it was years ago, I don't know if it was 5 or 10 years ago. I lost the source on this, but somebody had said that what YouTube is now, even though like we're a decade in or whatever at the time, maybe longer, that it's still only scratching the surface of what the potential of such a medium could be. And they likened it to cavemen drawing paintings on the wall. And that, coming to that and comparing it to what I'm doing, that's what I'm doing. This is me drawing cave paintings. That I'm well aware of my mortality. I'm well aware of the life cycle of the sun, and I'm well aware of the heat death of the universe, all according to science. And so it makes anything that I say or do meaningless. Well, that's fine, but I'm gonna do it anyways. Like, that's our job. That's what people do. Like, in the face of absurdity or meaninglessness, we must create our own meaning. So, without further ado, let me talk a little bit about punk rock. Where to begin? Here, get some more side notes out of the way. Something that got me cooking on this was a podcast I watched a couple months ago, the Duncan Trussell Family Hour. And he was interviewing Graham Hancock. I'm not sure what episode number this is. I'll try to put a link in the description. And a preface here, I don't want to just talk shit on Graham Hancock. But there was something, listening to him talk to Duncan, there was something that Graham just completely missed. So Graham's an author. I don't know if he writes about aliens or psychedelics or whatever the fuck, but I guess he's a respected guy in his field, and he's talking to Duncan and explaining like how he had to quit weed because he did it too long and then it started making him freak out and this and that. It's like, yeah, dude, you know, that happens to a lot of us. He was bragging, it sounded like bragging about his ayahuasca journeys, that, you know, he's fly to South America and did 5 sessions with a shaman in the jungle and this and that. And Duncan was like, well, okay, yeah, that's cool and all, but like, what about just like regular people? What are they, if they want a psychedelic experience, what are they supposed to do? And he's like, well, you could probably find an ayahuasquero in the States, but like, you know, you're gonna have to ask around and find something. And he's like, no, like, but like regular people, what are they supposed to do? Because Graham was emphasizing the necessity or importance of a cultural context into place a psychedelic experience and having it guided by, you know, a shaman or somebody who is experienced. And Duncan said, yeah, you know, when I was young, we were like 16 and, you know, we were hanging out in the trailer park and would take a bunch of acid and punch each other in the arm. And Graham was so condescending about that. And when I heard Duncan say that, I'm like, that was our culture. Like, Graham's pretending like we had no culture in America. And that's so far from the truth. Like, even in the vacuum of a culture, you create one. So when I heard Duncan share a simple experience with like virtually no details, I'm like, oh, I went through that too. And then I filtered it some more through my mind, and I'm like, punk rock is fucking culture, man. Like, I'm not saying it's high culture or whatever, but like, as far as like defining a culture, that's like a textbook example. So I could talk for days about punk rock, but I'm part of the struggle to record this was narrowing down what my point that I want to make about what the culture of punk rock is and how I won at that thing. Like, I didn't know it was a competition, but here I am, I won. Um, so it's about fulfilled experience. Um, Growing up, my first taste of punk rock, I had an older sister and she had a copy of Smash by The Offspring. And I loved that album. And like, Rancid was a mainstream that they got play on the radio or MTV or whatever. And I enjoyed that. And then I'm not sure if it was so much outside influence. Like, I think I had a buddy pick up a Bad Religion album or something. And I remember the first punk album that I bought, it was on cassette, Punk-O-Rama Volume 1, an Epitaph compilation. Bought it at a record store at the mall. Like, does that happen anymore? And also, it was full price. It cost the same amount as other albums. Like, in the following years, compilations would be priced either like free or $3 or $4 instead of like 10 or 12. But here I spent 10 or 12 bucks on a cassette, and it just like kind of opened my eyes to like, oh, there's like music out there that's like cool. Like, not like mainstream cool, not what they're selling you to say that it's cool, but like something that's genuinely cool. And it did not, part of what its characteristics is that it did not have widespread appeal. That my mom would refer to it as angry bastard music. And I get that, and that's, takes away from the being able to spread or the mainstream acceptance is like, wow, this is just like fucking noise, isn't it? But so I got into punk rock, was listening to it in like, I don't know, I my high school didn't really have a junior high school thing, but even probably as far back as like 7th or 8th grade, maybe 9th grade, starting to get into it more. By 10th grade, somebody showed me a jock hawk. That was kind of embarrassing. But a quick rundown of bands I was in. Like, it wasn't until I graduated high school, I was 18 or older, bought my first drum kit at a flea market. Off the old black dude at the flea market. He had a bunch of music stuff, and we would frequent Eastland flea market. I had a connection out there that I was selling books to, but we would just like go and hang out with him. Sometimes he'd need a break and it'd put us in charge of the stand or whatever, but eventually I bought the drum kit off of him. And I remember the day that I was gonna buy it, I was eyeballing it. Chunk's dad was out there, and I asked him, he's like, oh, so you're eyeballing his drums, huh? I'm like, yeah. He's like, do you want them? I'm like, yeah. He's like, buy them. I was like, okay. So, boy, I forgot all about that one. So, got a drum kit, didn't know how to play it. Very first band was called the Hemorrhoids. It was just me and Polka, and I don't know, we had some songs and they sucked, and we were scheduled to perform once out at the Rally Alley, and the show got canceled, and that show never happened. Well, I don't think we ever performed anywhere. Maybe once as the Hemorrhoids live on stage, I don't know. But the next band was Jesus and the Drunken Apostles. That was Polka, Joe Drunk, and myself. I don't think he was Joe Drunk yet at the time. But we were trying to emulate like Choking Victim. That was like our favorite band at the time, and we wanted to sound like them, but we didn't know how to play our instruments, or at least not well. So whatever came out was just kind of a sloppy, our interpretation of what we could muster up to try to emulate that. And I don't know, it sucked, but we did it anyways. That like we were willing to get on stage and just be a disaster, and that was the point. One of those first gigs, there was this like arcade over in Trafford that we played. I think that was the first gig in Jesus and the Drunken Apostles, and like I don't know, some people went to another house and like the cops came. Some of the people got arrested or let go, or I don't know. I wasn't caught up in that. But just like kid stuff, getting out in the world and causing chaos. And then I think Polka moved to Erie, so Jesus and the Drunken Apostles kind of, we didn't have our lineup anymore. So Joe Drunk and I formed the next band, Steel Drunk. And so Joe had been on bass, he switched over to guitar, and we picked up the bass player, Joe Jones, and practiced a bit, got a set together. And at a point it became obvious that Joe Jones was not able to make all the gigs because he worked at restaurants. So getting a Friday or Saturday off was difficult for him, and we were trying to play out a lot. So we wound up replacing Joe Jones with Chunk. And me, Joe Drunk, and Chunk carried Steel Drunk through the glory years. Now that I've introduced 3 of those characters, the majority of the people that I've played with